So glad you've joined us today as we continue in our study of the prophecies of the Bible which have come to pass and what have not yet come to pass. We are continuing in the book of Jeremiah. We last left off in Jeremiah chapter 49. Please turn there if you're following along. And we shall begin in verse 28. This is prophecy 2177. It says, concerning Kedar and concerning the kingdoms of Hazar, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, shall smite, just saith the Lord. So here we have a judgment falling upon the kingdoms of Kedar and Hazar. Verses 28 through 30 are pretty much an announcement of the invasion, and that it'll be very pretty much widespread. Verse 29, widespread. 29 says, their tents and their flocks shall they take away. They shall take to themselves their curtains and all their vessels and their camels, and they shall cry unto them. Fears on every side. Then moving down, prophecy 2178, it mentions how their camels will become booty and the multitude of their cattle a spoil. The Babylonians will more or less take possession of everything, including all the livestock, camels and cattle, which they did. It says, I shall scatter into all the winds them that are in the utmost corners. So these two kingdoms of Kedar and Hazar will be scattered, as calamity will come from all sides. Then prophecy 2179, verse 33, and Hazor shall be a dwelling for dragons and a desolation forever. There shall no man abide there, nor any son of man dwell in it. Desolation forever. Well, forever is into eternity. If this has not yet if this has taken place, then Hazor remains a desolation. Nobody's inhabited it since, and if it has not, then it will certainly happen in the latter days. Then in verse 34, we have a prophecy against Elam, verses 34 through 38. More or less talk about the scattering again into all four corners of the nation of Elam. And what it further talks about in verse 33, and I will set my throne in Elam, and will destroy from thence the king and the princess, saith the Lord. This, when it says, I will set my throne, this is actually the throne of Nebuchadnezzar, and yet it's being spoken of as God's throne, because it's under God's authority that Nebuchadnezzar has the power to overrun Elam and completely scatter everybody. But then in verse 39, prophecy 2181, but it shall come to pass in the latter days that I will bring again the captivity of Elam. So what that's saying is, in the latter days, the captives of Elam will be set free. The descendants of those who once inhabited Elam will once again return to their land. Chapter 50. Chapters 50 and 51 is really one entire prophecy of judgment against the nation of Babylon. Up to this point, Babylon has been viewed as a tool that God has used to bring judgment on all these other nations, and yet at the same time, God will also bring judgment upon Babylon, because even though God allowed them to perform their tyranny. They did it with evil hearts and evil intentions, and that too must be judged. All right. We start in verse 2, where it says, Babylon is taken, Bel is confounded, Merodach is broken in pieces. Bel and Merodach are Babylonian pagan gods. So these two gods will fall as Babylon falls. That's prophecy 21:82. Verse 3, prophecy 21:83. For out of the north cometh up a nation against her. That'll be the Medes and the Persians, as they will come up from the northern country and conquer Babylon. Prophecy 21:84, verses 4 through 7. This talks about the regathering of Israel and how they shall return from Babylonian captivity into their own land. Verses 8 through 16 outline the invasion, or should I say the command of God for the invasion of Babylon. Verse 9, it says, For lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations. So this would be the Medes and the Persians, and actually some other nations also will join them in overtaking Babylon. These nations will be mentioned later on in this episode. And then in verse 18, prophecy 21:86, Therefore thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, Behold, I will punish the king of Babylon and his land as I have punished the king of Assyria. So the reasons God punished the king of Assyria will also fall upon the king of Babylon, as will the measure of punishment be the same. Verses 19 and 20, prophecy 21:87, And I will bring Israel again into his habitation. So again, this talks about the return of Israel to its land from Babylonian captivity. And it says more. It says, He shall feed on Carmel and Bashan, and his soul shall be satisfied upon Mount Ephraim and Gilead. And in verse 20, it says he will that he will not find any iniquity in Israel. So they have been punished for their sins. They're punished for their iniquity, and now they get a clean slate when they return. Verses 21 through 29, they outline God's command to destroy Babylon. And then starting in verse 30, we see the consequences of this command. It says, Therefore shall her young men fall in the streets, and all her men of war shall be cut off that day, saith the Lord. That's prophecy 21:88. And verses 31 through 32. Prophecy 21:89 is against the proud of Babylon. It's saying, Behold, I am against thee, O thou most proud, saith the Lord God of hosts, for thy day is come, and the most proud shall stumble and fall, and none shall raise him up. I will kindle a fire in his cities, and it shall devour all around him. So, the proud are going to fall. That's what happened with Nebuchadnezzar. He was so proud of himself, of the empire he made, and no sooner did he say that, but God said, the kingdom has departed from you, and he became insane for the next 7 years. And what's also needs to be pointed out, it talks about a fire in his cities, and it shall devour them. So God promises fire in his judgment. Okay, verses 35 through 37, prophecy 21:90. Here it talks about a sword being brought upon Babylon, a sword upon the Chaldeans, upon the liars, the mighty men, the horses, and chariots. So The sword represents war and destruction at the hands of the soldiers of the Medes and the Persians. But then in verse 38, prophecy 21:91, a drought is upon her waters, and they shall be dried up. For it is the land of graven images, and they are mad upon their idols. So, not only will Babylon fall by the sword, it shall also fall by drought. And God specifically says it's their own idolatry that has brought forth this drought. Prophecy 21:92, verses 39 and 40. Here it talks about how there will be wild beasts and owls that will dwell where Babylon used to stand, and it shall be no more inhabited forever. Neither shall be dwelt in from generation to generation. As God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, so shall no man abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell therein. Now, has this already been fulfilled? Possibly, because Babylon has never again been recreated. It hasn't. Even though some have tried. Saddam Hussein actually tried to recreate Babylon, and he did not. Because if God says it's not going to happen, it won't happen, no matter how hard man tries. But it could also refer to the fall of end times Babylon in the book of Revelation. That could be what this is referring to. But one way or another, Babylon will remain desolate forever. All right, prophecy 21:93, verses 41 and 42. Behold, a people shall come from the north, a great nation. That, of course, is the Medes and the Persians. And it says, they shall hold the bow and the lance. They are cruel, will not show mercy. Their voice shall roar like the sea. They shall ride upon horses, everyone put in array. So this is a further description of the Medes and the Persians and what their invasion is going to look like, or what their soldiers in the invasion will look like. Verse 43, prophecy 21:94. The king of Babylon hath heard the report of them, and his hands waxed feeble. Anguish took hold of him, and pangs as of a woman in travail. This was fulfilled when King Belshazzar saw the handwriting on the wall. And not too long after that, the Medes and the Persians invaded. Verse 44, he shall come up like a lion from the swelling of Jordan unto the habitation of the strong, but I will make them suddenly run away from her. So what this is saying is that just like the flooding of the Jordan drives a lion out of his lair to more inhabited places, so Cyrus was to come onto Babylon. Now, and I think it's very critical here that Babylon is referred to as a lion, because it's widely considered the four beasts in the book of Daniel. You have the lion, the bear, the leopard, and I think it's the ten-horned beast. The lion is referred to as Babylon. So this could be a confirmation that the lion is indeed Babylon. Okay, and again, that's prophecy 21:95. Okay, and then verse 46, prophecy 21:96. At the noise of the taking of Babylon, the earth is moved, and the cry is heard among the nations. Now you got to remember, Babylon is the big superpower of the world. And so when Babylon does fall, I mean, the whole world is going to take notice. The whole world is going to be stunned that this mighty empire has fallen. Okay. Chapter 51, prophecy 2197. And the first four verses, again, it talks about the Medes and the Persians invading Babylon, where it says, I will raise up against Babylon and against them that dwell in the midst of them that rise up against me a destroying wind, and will send unto Babylon fanners that shall fanner and empty her land. And him that bendeth, let the archer bend his bow. And then in verse 4, the slain shall fall in the land of the Chaldeans, and they that are thrust through inner streets. Okay? Now, pretty much a repeat of what's been said already. But then we move down to verses 6, 7, and 8. And this I believe refers to future Babylon, end times Babylon in the book of Revelation. I mean, first it says, flee out of the midst of Babylon. That's also mentioned in Revelation, flee out of Babylon. And then it says, Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hands that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore nations are mad. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. I'd like to now read from the book of Revelation, chapter 17, verses 4 through 6. It says, The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication, and on her head was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, and the abominations of the earth. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of her martyrs, and when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. So, it's the very same symbolism being spoken of here in Revelation as it is here. So I really believe this is a reference to end times Babylon. Okay, moving on down to verses 20 through 24. Prophecy 2199. Thou art my battle axe and weapons of war. For with thee I will break in pieces the nations, and with thee I will destroy kingdoms. Now this prophecy is concerning King Cyrus of the Medes and the Persians, upon which they demolished Babylon. And look what else God says about Cyrus. And with me I will break in pieces the horse and his rider. I'll also break in pieces man and woman, and young and old, break in pieces young man and the maid, the shepherd and his flock. I will break in pieces the husbandman and his yoke of oxen. And I will render unto Babylon and to all inhabitants all their evil they've done in Zion in your sight, saith the Lord. So King Cyrus is being given a great position of might and destruction. He is a weapon in the hand of God. Now, that's very important to remember because, a battle axe just leaning up against the wall by itself does nothing. It's only in someone else's hand that can actually do something. So, God is making it very clear that apart from him, Cyrus is nothing. And really, any man apart from God is nothing. Can do nothing. Verse 25. Prophecy 2200. Behold, I'm against thee, O destroying mountain, saith the Lord, which destroyeth all the earth. I will stretch out my hand upon thee, and roll thee down from the rocks, and will make thee a burnt mountain. This mountain, of course, Babylon. And again, it says burnt mountain. The promise of fire in Babylon. Okay. All right, verse 26, prophecy 2201. And they shall not take of thee a stone for a corner, nor a stone for foundations, but thou shalt be desolate forever. Now this verse has not been fulfilled, but will be in the destruction under the seventh bowl of destruction. It says, many stones in the past have been taken from the site of ancient Babylon and used in other buildings nearby, or when it is destroyed, like Sodom, chapter 50, verse 40, not one will be taken from the place where Babylon was located. Okay? So even the stones won't exist anymore. That's how complete the destruction will be. Okay. Verses 22 and 28, prophecy 22:02. Set ye up a standard in the land, blow the trumpet among the nations, prepare the nations against her, call together against her the kingdoms of Arat, Mini, and Ashkenaz. Appoint a captain against her. So these are the other nations that will join up with the Medes and the Persians to overtake Babylon. Okay, verse 29. And the land shall tremble and sorrow, for every purpose of the Lord shall be performed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without inhabitant. Prophecy 22:03, again, the desolation. Prophecy 22:04, verse 30, the mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight, they have remained in their holds, their might has failed, they have become as women. So all the mighty soldiers of Babylon will be rendered helpless. Verses 31 and 32, prophecy 22:05. One post shall run to meet another, one messenger to meet another, to show the king of Babylon that his city has been taken at one hand, and that the passages are stopped, and the reeds they have burned with fire, and the men of war are affrighted. So, again, this reiterates the fear of Babylonian soldiers as well as fire that has been promised in Babylon. In verse 33, the daughter of Babylon is like a threshing floor, and it is time to thresh her. Yet a little while at the time of her harvest shall come. I think that's pretty obvious what that means. Verse 36, therefore, thus saith the Lord, behold, I will plead thy case, and take thy vengeance for thee, and I will dry up her sea, and make her springs dry. Here God is speaking to Israel, and he is going to take vengeance on Israel, again, talking about the drought that will come to her seas and makes her springs dry. Again, that's prophecy 22:07. Verse 37, Babylon shall become heaps, a dwelling for dragon places. That's 22:08. Verse 38, they shall roar like lions, and they shall yell as lions' whelps. 22:09. Verse 39, in their heat I will make their feasts, and I will make them drunken, that they may rejoice, asleep, a perpetual sleep, and do not wake. That's prophecy 22:10. Verse 40, I will bring them down like lambs to the slaughter, like lambs with the goats. It's prophecy 22:11. Verse 41, how is Sheshach taken? Sheshach's another name for Babylon. And how is the praise of the whole earth surprised? How is Babylon become an astonishment among the nations? That's prophecy 22:12. Again, that's going to talk about how the world is going to view the fall of mighty Babylon. They are going to be astonished. But it also is a great example of just how powerful God is. Okay. The sea is come upon Babylon. She is covered with multitude of the waves thereof. That's prophecy 22:13. I don't believe that refers to an actual sea. I believe that talks about the waves of invaders. Verse 43, her cities are a desolation, a dry land, a wilderness, where no man dwelleth. We've heard that prophecy already. That's 22:14. And I will punish Bel in Babylon, and I will bring forth out of his mouth that which he has swallowed up. And the nations shall not flow any more unto him. Yea, the wall of Babylon shall fall. That's prophecy 22:15. Okay. Then we go down to verses 47 through 48. Therefore, behold, the days come that I will do judgment upon the graven images of Babylon, and her whole land shall be confounded, and all her slain shall fall in the midst of her. Down to verse 49, and Babylon has caused the slain of Israel to fall, so at Babylon shall fall the slain of all the earth. Again, the reasons for the judgment, we have idolatry, and we also have vengeance upon Babylon for Israel's sake. Verse 52, prophecy 22:17. Wherefore, behold, the day is come, saith the Lord, that I will do judgment upon her graven images, and through all her land, and the wounded shall groan. Again, that's coming judgment upon Babylon's idolatry, 22:17. 54, a sound and a cry cometh up from Babylon, and great destruction from the land of Chaldeans, prophecy 22:18. Again, the cry of Babylon, the whole world is going to hear it. 56, because the spoiler is come upon her, even upon Babylon, and her mighty men are taken, every one of their bows broken. That's prophecy 22:19. 57, and I will make drunk her princes, and her wise men, and her captains, and her rulers, and they shall sleep a perpetual sleep. This is basically everything that was mentioned in verses 30 through 44. You know, God is simply repeating himself for added emphasis. And just to let you know, he's not kidding around. He really means what he says. And verse 58. The broad walls of Babylon will be utterly broken, her high gates burned with fire. And the people shall labor in vain, and the folk in the fire, and they shall be weary. Again, the promise of fire and the fall of the walls of Babylon. That's promise 22:21. And here we are in the final few verses of this chapter. Jeremiah is ordered to sign the book and carry the book of prophecies to the Jews that are in Babylonian captivity. And after he reads them, he is to tie a stone around the book and throw it into the Euphrates. Now, why am I mentioning this? Because in verse 62 it says, "Then after he reads the words of the book, then shall those say, O Lord, thou hast spoken against this place, Babylon, to cut it off, that none shall remain in it, desolation, neither man nor beast, but that it shall be desolate forever." That's prophecy 22:22. And that concludes the book of Jeremiah. Join us next time where you shall begin the book of Lamentations.
Jesus.